presentations this afternoon. But before I go through the program and other areas for the afternoon, just a gentle reminder, we have some delegates that haven't registered till now. It's very important that you register. Please, could you just go to the registration table outside if you haven't registered yet? It's really, really important that you get registered. So please, if you miss the registration in the morning due to time or other constraints, please have yourself registered. It's really important. Another reminder is about the cocktail this evening. It's supposed to start at 6. If we could do well with time this afternoon, we could have ample time to mingle this evening from 6. So I hope all our presenters are mindful of the time as allocated to them. If you could finish your presentations in time, maybe 3 minutes before your allocated time, so you accommodate questions and comments, so that by the time you're done with your presentation, you're just on time. This is to create more space for the cocktail also in the evening. And remember, the program runs until Friday, so we could do better if we could finish in time, mingle, and then we complete the rest of the programs. We've got a number of presentations according to the program. First presentation, we're just waiting for some technical issues with the laptop. As soon as we're up and running, we should be able to start. We'll start with a presentation on Africa cyber threat landscape, and this is to be taken by Mrs. Lorraine Messler, the Regional Specialized Officer for Interpol. It's about a 20 minutes presentation, followed by another, Emerging Trends in Malawi's Cybersecurity Landscape. It's going to be a review of recent initiatives by the Malawi government and future directions. This will be done by Mr. Christopher Banda, who's the head of National Emergency Computer Response Team. He works with MACRA. And our third presentation for the afternoon is the Southern African Development Community SADC Cybersecurity Maturity Reports. This is a 2021 report by Professor Wallace Chigona. Also, he's a professor in information systems at UCT in South Africa. We have another presentation that is going to be an online presentation. It's a presentation on navigating cyber risk in the financial sector and a use case analysis. So we'll break for coffee, and then we'll finalize the afternoon with 3 presentations. One on how to conduct effective open source investigations online, another on the importance of cyber threat intelligence, and the other to be Africa Said membership drive. And then it is at that point that we'll break for the cocktail this evening. So as soon as we're up and running with the technicalities, we should be able to start for the afternoon. So just another reminder to the presenters, be mindful of time so we wind up in good time. I'm sure the morning session went fine, we were just on time. I'm sure the afternoon will be much, much better. So I'm wishing you a lovely afternoon as we participate and of course benefit from the conference. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. So the technical issues have been sorted, so I think we can get started. Yes, okay. So indeed, I'm a regional cybercrime specialized officer with the Africa Cybercrime Operations Desk at Interpol, which is responsible for implementing the project AVJOC that you see on the screen there. The project started in 2021, and in short, the Africa Desk aims to promote cooperation and best practice sharing amongst African member countries and Interpol, and to drive intelligence-led coordinated actions against cybercrime and their perpetrators in the African region through the implementation of an harmonized regional coordination framework. To do so, we have 5 project members in Singapore at the Cybercrime Directorate, and 6 of us are based in the regional bureaus in Africa. So I mentioned intelligence-led actions. One of our key activities is to produce the Africa Cyber Threat Assessment Report, which offers analysis and insights into the current cyber threat landscape, which also highlighting strategies for the region moving forward based on what we've learned. The threat information is crucial as it is used to support operations and awareness campaign. The 2022 report is available on a project webpage in English, Spanish, and French, and it was produced as a result of cross-sector collaboration between the key regional stakeholders, as well as law enforcement agencies and the private sector. So this is the report I'm going to be presenting to you today. And a delegate mentioned the report earlier today, so I know that at least one of you has read it. So first and foremost, the report provides an overview of the state of digital transformation on the African continent, which, as we all know, is a growing phenomenon. African countries are making significant financial investments in infrastructure and digital access. It was found that most of this growth can be attributed to mobile internet due to its convenience and affordability. Mobile networks have become increasingly reliable across most African countries, making it easier for people to remain connected online and benefit from access to online services such as e-commerce and social media. Additionally, many governments in Africa are taking measures to ensure that everyone has fair access to digital tools and benefit from the new opportunities offered by the ever-changing digital landscape. But as we all know, growing digital transformation also represents a growing risk when it comes to cyber threats. On the screen there, you can see the prominent threats observed in the 2021 report and the 2022 reports. We'll briefly go into each of these threats, but I would like to mention that common issues were found with each, amongst others, the lack of reporting by victims to the law enforcement, the lack of awareness on the cyber threats, and insufficient cybersecurity measures in place. You will also find that cybercrime as a service impacts all of these threats. As such, I will begin with crimeware as a service, which is something that cybersecurity experts, law enforcement communities, and other stakeholders have been aware of for a long time. Crimeware as a service has made it possible for cybercriminals to offer their malicious codes as a service to other criminals who use it to infect computers, steal data, ultimately monetize their illegal activities. Overall, crimeware as a service has lowered the entry barrier for new, less technology-savvy cybercriminals and facilitates cybercriminals' malicious activities by enabling them to carry out sophisticated attacks without the need for advanced technical skills. These services on cybercrime dark web forums and marketplaces are broadly advertised as a cheap solution, and a range of services is readily available. It is also offered as an optimal choice for advanced attackers who want to conduct hit-and-run campaign. Next, we have business email compromise, BICC. And so for the 7th year consecutive, business email compromise attacks have been the most financially devastating cyber threat worldwide, and the continent is not spared. Many of the actors conducting BICC scams have been found to be based in West Africa, often having connections with wider criminal networks worldwide. This allows them to target large numbers of victims on a global scale. In response to the high concentration of BICC actors detected within the Nigerian region, Interpol's Africa Desk, alongside its private partners, and the Nigerian police force launched a successful operation in May 2022, codenamed Operation Delilah. The purpose of this operation was to severely disrupt a prolific BICC group known as Silver Terrier, or TMT, and this led to the arrest of the head of a transnational cybercrime group. This proactive law enforcement action was followed by another one, codenamed Killer Bee, based on the intelligence received from a private sector partner, Trend Micro. This Interpol-led operation resulted in the arrest of 3 Nigerian BICC actors after an extensive investigation by the Nigerian Economic and Financial Crime Commission. Both operations demonstrate the importance of a multi-stakeholder approach, as these joint efforts provided extra support in tackling such sophisticated cybercrime networks. The African region has also been the victim of BICC crimes, of course, in recent years. The threat of BICC has become particularly acute in the African region due to the rapid transition to an increasingly digitalized economy. Another factor that contributes to the rise in BICC attack across Africa is an observed lack of basic cybersecurity practices within companies operating on the continent. Now, for perspective, it was found that African countries represent 0.75% of global BICC attempts between 2021 and May 2022, with data from Trend Micro revealing that South Africa accounted for more than half of the BICC cases reported in the region during that same period. A lack of reporting of BICC crime has been observed. It is vital to create public awareness for businesses to report any instances of BICC threats they encounter so that valuable information related to BICC operations can be collected by law enforcement agencies across Africa and used to gain further insight into this crime trend and implement measures to combat it. Next, we have phishing. As technology advances and attackers become more sophisticated in their techniques, phishing remains an ever-present threat for organizations and individuals alike. Between January and July 2022, Kaspersky found close to 16 million phishing objects detected in Africa. The majority of these malicious activities were conducted through phishing emails or web pages. Group IB identified over 1 million phishing URLs between January and August 2022 in the African region. The proliferation of phishing attacks can be attributed to the relative ease with which an individual can engage in this type of criminal activity. This is due in part to the availability of phishing as a service. For as little as $20, an individual can purchase a phishing kit that comes with all the materials necessary for launching a successful attack. In addition, video tutorials are provided which demonstrate how to use and assemble the kit. There are also after-sales services packages with regular updates that help prevent the criminals' phishing emails from being detected by modern internet security solutions. Threat actors who may not have any technical knowledge can therefore launch their own phishing attacks with minimal effort. While numerous malicious phishing attacks have been detected in the African region, the number of reports to law enforcement agencies is much lower than expected. The lack of knowledge surrounding cyber hygiene makes people even more vulnerable and make it even easier for those committing these crimes to launch successful phishing campaigns without detection or reprisals from local authorities. Now, ransomware. The number of ransomware attacks have been rising steeply over the past few years, and they are now considered to be one of the most serious threats faced by organizations of all sizes worldwide. According to Shadow Server, data collected from ransomware leak sites for the period January to September 2022 indicates that African victims are being targeted by a wide range of ransomware families. During this period, the most prevalent ransomware family was Logbit 2.0, which accounted for approximately 38.8% of all detected infection across Africa. It was followed closely by PISA at 14.3%. Shadow servers also reported that South Africa is the nation most targeted by ransomware attacks, accounting for 42% of all detected attacks. Morocco is next with 8%, while Botswana and Egypt come in at 6%. Tanzania and Kenya each account for 4% of detected ransomware attacks. The development of ransomware as a service has allowed cybercriminals to lease pre-developed versions of ransomware, which can be used to carry out attacks. While the availability of ransomware as a service, implementing successful ransomware attacks is easier than ever, and attackers no longer need to have advanced technical skills and experience. In addition, this type of service also makes it much easier for attackers to target multiple victims at once due to its scalability and flexibility. Moreover, attackers can easily adjust their technique depending on what works best in each case, as they can quickly switch between different versions of malware. Data shared by 42 countries in the African region revealed that only 59 reports of ransomware cases have been filed with law enforcement in 11 countries. The actual situation is believed to be much worse, as many individuals and businesses are unwilling to report these cases to the police. It is estimated that only a small percentage of ransomware incidents are made public. Banking Trojans and stealers. The rapid growth in the digital technology sector, particularly in financial technology and e-commerce, also facilitates attacks in the form of malicious software such as banking Trojans and stealers. As revealed by Trend Micro detections, Morocco is the most affected African country with almost 19,000 detections. South Africa is close behind with over 6,500 detections of malicious software. 5,300 instances of malicious software were detected in Nigeria, 1,400 in Cameroon, and 691 in Algeria. Reports have also revealed that the most prevalent banking Trojan and stealer malwares are Zbot and Ferret, which are very difficult to detect. The former constitutes 67% of all detections in the region, while the latter accounts for 15%. The use of both malicious software programs has increased in recent years, which affects African businesses and individuals. Another stealer malware to be aware of in the African region is the Red Line stealer. Group IB's research has revealed that between January and August 2022 alone, as many as 5.8 million compromised accounts located within African IPs were acquired using the Red Line stealer. Ultimately, a collective effort between banks, government agencies, and individual users is required in order to stem the tide of cybercrime caused by banking Trojan in Africa. Now, we've all heard about online scams and extortion, of course. So we have advance payments, non-delivery scams, shopping scam, romance scams, sextortion, tech support scam, and cryptocurrency scams are among the most common online scams and are becoming increasingly prevalent in the African region. While these crimes seem to be orchestrated via social engineering, researchers at Trend Micro identified 7.7 million malicious web detection as part of their research, with most of the detection related to scam websites. It has also been reported that extortion spam schemes remain a popular method of cyber attack around the world. Of the African countries tracked, 69% of the extortion schemes detected were in Morocco. When looking at the global distribution of extortion spams detected by Trend Micro, 2.44% of sender IP addresses were located to South Africa, 2.13% to Morocco, 0.94% to Kenya, and 0.91% to Tunisia, suggesting that these servers were either compromised or formed part of a botnet used for malicious activities such as extortion spam campaigns. These types of online crimes are particularly prolific in the African region due to a lack of public awareness about their existence and the way they operate. With technology advancing so quickly, it can be difficult for individuals to keep up with the latest trend in cybercrime and identify the potential danger signs in order to avoid becoming victims of such crime. Now, I mentioned lack of cyber awareness a few times. To tackle this, the Africa Desk attempts to promote good cyber hygiene throughout the region and empower communities to protect themselves from becoming victims of cybercrime. To do so, we ran a global campaign in 2021 and 2022, and there will be a campaign this year as well. If you'd like to partner with us on this campaign by sharing our videos and infographics, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. Now, cyber capabilities. Again, 42 member countries sent us information about their cyber capabilities, and the data share showed that the majority of the countries in the African region have cyber-related policies, legislation, and agencies in place to provide an appropriate level of response to the broad range of cyber threats that are faced by countries worldwide. The data shared also revealed the following. 24 countries have not established any form of online platform or mechanism to enable the public to report cybercrime. 8 reported not having a dedicated cyber unit. 7 reported not having necessary cybercrime legislation in place. and 10 stated that they do not have any form of cybercrime prevention-related initiative. Capability limitation within the units were noted in terms of handling sophisticated acts of cybercrime. Also noted, limited outreach efforts in terms of improving the capabilities of cybercrime investigators at a provincial and district level. In an environment where there is a thriving economy, there are several options that the relevant law enforcement agencies in the African region and other government stakeholders could consider. An integrated and coordinated cybercrime strategy or action plan can help to create the vision, goals, and priorities needed to better combat cybercrime, directly through the provision of a law enforcement response and indirectly via cross-government working and by developing partnerships with the public and private sector, domestically and internationally, to create a resilient and reliable cybercrime environment. The aim is to avoid duplicated work being undertaken and to tackle issues such as those related to internet content and regulation, to provide a long-term strategic enabling framework through which to examine the challenge and opportunities we face, and ultimately to identify priority areas where nations should be focusing their efforts in terms of cybersecurity and combating cybercrime for the benefit of all stakeholders. On the screen, you will see a series of recommendations for law enforcement to consider. Now, the report concludes with an overview of the joint operational framework for improving coordinated actions against cybercrime in the African region. It was developed by the Africa Desk. The framework aims to improve the coordination and the effective cooperation between law enforcement agencies, private sector, and other international intergovernmental organizations. This framework will guide Interpol-led operations with the law enforcement community in the African region, setting out how to formulate, coordinate, and communicate joint operations in order to ensure the effective and timely exchange of information. The framework specifically calls for effective cooperation between law enforcement, communities, other international intergovernmental organizations, and the private sector. Again, multi-stakeholder approach. So I hope this provided you a good idea of what the threat assessment report is all about. Again, it is available on the Interpol website under Project AVJOC. If you have any questions, please I don't think we can take questions, but please, you can find me later on, and I'll be happy to answer your questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Mrs. Lorraine Messler. She's our Regional Specialized Officer for the Interpol. Give her another round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. More so for being very time cautious. We were expecting questions, we never got any. I'm sure the presentation was so clear that no need for further clarifications. Distinguished delegates, at this juncture, I'll call upon the Head of National Emergency Computer Response Team for MACRA, Mr. Christopher Banda, who's coming with a presentation on the emerging trends in Malawi's cybersecurity landscape. This is a review of recent initiatives and future directions. You've got 15 minutes, sir? Okay.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you very much. Okay, as you said, I'll make a presentation on that topic. My presentation will go through those areas. That's legal framework, national cybersecurity strategy, Malawi 8th, key achievements, prospects in cybersecurity, and also looked at challenges, and also lessons learned so far with our journey. Maybe from the speeches, from the minister, from the board chair, and even my director general, they talked about legal framework in terms of the Communication Act, which establishes MACRA, and also it regulates the provision of communication services in Malawi. And then we have the Electronic Transaction and Cybersecurity Act 2016, which addresses challenges related to cybersecurity and also electronic transaction, again, which establishes the Malawi 8th. We have the National Cybersecurity Strategy, which describes how Malawi will ensure the secure, trusted, resilient, and safe cyberspace used by Malawi institutions and citizens. Basically, this strategy was started to be developed in around 2016, and it was approved 2019. Now it's in implementation stage. The vision of the strategy is to a nation with a secure, trusted, resilient, and safe cyberspace that promotes a knowledge-based society and socio-economic development. The mission is to develop and deliver effective cybersecurity capacity, services, and infrastructure that instills confidence in the cyberspace. The strategy has 6 strategic goals, which one looks at identification and protection of critical information infrastructure, and also develop, enhance cybersecurity-related capacity, infrastructure, legal, regulatory, and other related frameworks. Also looks at promoting awareness, information sharing, and also collaboration. Enable and continuously improve the safety of vulnerable groups in cyberspace, especially the safety of children. I think there was a question during panel discussion at some point. There is the whole, this part which addresses the vulnerable groups. Enhance and coordinate the fight against all forms of cybercrime, and also promote the use of cyberspace to drive socio-economic development. These are the 6 strategic goals which the strategy is built on. Now, on Malawi 8th, this was established as a unit within MACRA to act as a focal point for coordination of cybersecurity-related issues at both national and international level. It has the vision to be the trusted cybersecurity emergency response team that makes Malawi and the world a safe cyberspace. It provides a comprehensive set of response to cybersecurity threats and vulnerability through national coordination with all stakeholders to effectively respond and prevent cybersecurity incidents for critical infrastructure and other systems of the national interest. The current structure of the set, there's a head of set, set manager, incident response officers, and also malware analysis. In total, it's about six staff, established staff. However, out of 6, the staff on ground in terms of what permanent, there are 3. However, we are supported by other units from MACRA, like finance, legal, IT, communication, and also HR, including procurement processes. So these other departments, they provide support to the national set. However, there is a planned review so that the structure we can have more staff because of the work on ground. Basically, our constituencies is all government organizations, critical infrastructure operators, private companies, residents of Malawi, who are national set. And the services of what we provide is there is information security incidents management, vulnerability management, situational awareness, digital forensics, knowledge transfer, and also information security event management. Those who are familiar with the first services, I think you may recall they are there, and also maybe one which is just the digital forensic aspect. Incidents can be reported. Can be reported through the website, and we have a reporting mechanism. Now, the common incidences so far in Malawi is issue of social media cases, mobile money fraud, and the website defacement. These are the common issues, especially on the mobile money and social media issues. Among those services which I've talked about, we have this cyber threat sharing platform for constituencies to collaborate and share information related to cybersecurity. This provides access to cyber threat intelligence for organizations to take proactive actions on emerging threats. Basically, if to access that content, you need to register, and you should be able to access the information. To inquire maybe anything, that's the email which maybe you can contact us, and then we can add us you to the information sharing platform. Basically, I would say it has been a journey for the set to be in place. Since 2017, our legislation was passed in Parliament in 2016, which mandated MACRA to establish the set. So in 2017, a unit was set within MACRA, and one person was assigned to coordinate the implementation process. In 2018, around March, I think especially our local delegates, you may recall, we had a workshop in Lilongwe again, where ITU and us with stakeholders, we had an assessment to gather insights on the best approach for implementing the Malawi set. This was done in March 2018. And then in November the same year, that's 2018, we had a workshop again with all stakeholders to design the national set. And again, work together with ITU. 2019, MACRA and ITU agreed and signed a contract in terms of to help us to implement the national set based on the assessment and also the design which was done. So an agreement was done between MACRA and ITU. 2020, 2021, this is the period initially we planned to implement, maybe to do more, but unfortunately because of the COVID issues, things were stalled, and a lot of things could not proceed because of the pandemic. So 2021 and 2021, up to 2022 is when now we finalized technical implementation of the tools. So basically, that has been our journey in terms of technical operationalization of the set. Key achievements which we have accomplished. Number one is, of course, there was coordination of the cybersecurity maturity model, and then coordination of the development of the national cybersecurity strategy, and also the national cybersecurity risk assessment, which was first done in 2020, and also the second cybersecurity maturity model, which was done in 2021. And further, the second national cybersecurity risk assessment, which was also done in 2021. This, the national cybersecurity risk assessment, I see, is it Cameroon? Again, from the panel discussion, I think we are doing similar issues on that one. Another point is on the coordination of the development of the national public key infrastructure framework, which was done. And also, currently we are coordinating the development of child online protection strategy. This is also being worked together with the ITU. And also, we conducted capacity building for law enforcement, judiciary, and legal practitioners. This was done last month. We worked together with ITU. And another point is capacity building on cybersecurity for various law security agencies. We had training in December last year on the CH digital forensics, and we opened up to our law enforcement and also defense forces. So we invited them and they participated in that training. Again, the issue which now is at hand, we have recommended and lobbied with government to join Budapest, of course, and Malawi conventions. So the government has taken some steps whereby sooner they should be able to write maybe Council of Europe and take necessary steps. Another issue is on fellowship. We are under first fellowship as of now, since 2021. So through that fellowship, first he has been mentoring us from that time. We have participated in the global conferences for the first last year, and also maybe this year we might also participate. Malawi set is also a member and also a vice chair of the SADC set. The SADC has a regional set which now is at the initial stage. So Malawi set is the vice chair from South Africa. Another point which is key is on improved local and international cooperation, coordination and networking among stakeholders. We have seen quite improvement in terms of networking locally because of the engagement, the workshop which we have been doing, especially when we are doing the consultation and also the workshops for design and assessment for the set, and even when we are doing the assessment on the CMM. So that has built some improved networking within Malawi, and not only that, other bodies like Africa Set, ITU, FIRST, SADC, and others. Another issue is coordinating sector set establishment. Currently, I think my DG also mentioned about the sector set issue. We are targeting academia, which we have been engaging with them, especially marine. Banking sector, we have been engaging the central bank. Central bank is at an advanced stage to implement the banking sector set. Defense, that's Malawi Defense Force, to help to lobby and help to set up the unit, like cyber unit, and also government, and also Malawi Police Service. Future prospect plan one is to review or to develop the national cybersecurity policy. This one, the policy within current government is reviewing the ICT policy, which is called now digitalization policy. Within the digitalization policy, there's a policy statement for cybersecurity, whereby previous policy had nothing on cybersecurity because it was approved around 2013 at that time. So now they have incorporated it, of course still a draft, but there's a policy on cybersecurity. Review of the national cybersecurity strategy, I think in our panel discussion this was talked about, because we started to draft in 2016, approved 2019, and now, time has passed, we need to review again. Implement the child online protection strategy. As I say, the development is underway, and now we see a lot of activities coming around the child online protection strategy, child online protection. Implement sector sets across sector, as I've indicated, and also introduce additional services. Basically, since we hope that we'll have more staff sooner, and then we should be able to introduce more. I think one service which we see now coming to us is to conduct some security assessment for organizations. I think some few organizations have come to us say, could you help this? Could you help this? So that's one issue which we are looking forward to do. Review of the cybersecurity legislations. I think the minister, the board chair, and the director general talked about it. Development of the regulations under the Electronic Transaction and Cybersecurity Act. Basically, this is underway. We are looking for regulation related to critical information infrastructure, and also maybe the Malawi 8th itself, regulations. And further, improve local and international cooperation through MOUs and conventions. We expect the Budapest, as I said, and Malabo to be signed. And also, so far we have done MOUs with the Botswana. We expect to sign MOU with maybe Tanzania, Mozambique, Zambia, and others, Mauritius. There's that debate, but that's where we are now. And then, also we want to intensify awareness, also capacity building, and also engage academia to promote cybersecurity in schools in terms of programs and trainings, and also to adapt standards to improve the cybersecurity environment, and including the promotion of digital trust by implementing the public key infrastructure. We have challenges, yes, gaps in our legislation, delays in policy development, limited resource, lack of public education, and the lack of capacity within the sector. Lesson learned, what I would say is, I think we have got a lot of questions. How did you do? What was your journey? What are the issues? So I would say the number one point, there is need to have a mandate, a very key, maybe through legislation or a strategy. A country it's important to have that one. Also, stakeholder engagement, consultation, very key. Look at the process which we took. It was a continuous process, engaging with the stakeholders, the constituency to have an input in the establishment, the development. Very important because it helps to build trust. Another point is to start small. Don't always look at something big. You can start small and then you move on. Use open source solutions. We are using open source as of now. We are not yet gone to the other solutions, but we are just using open source. Build capacity, and finally, keep on lobbying. CERT is something that is very new at all levels, I would say. To understand it is quite not just in a day. There's need to continuously engage with the senior executives and the stakeholders, the constituencies, to understand the need and also the processes. So keep on lobbying, keep on engaging. Thank you very much. I've been given space if there is maybe comment or question. Yes?
I have a question. So last year, my friends and I attended some competition in South Africa where we learned about the importance of not waiting for us to be attacked, for us to learn what to do, but also having measures in place where we can learn from our attackers before they attack us, so that we must be able to protect ourselves. So my question to you is, does Malawi CRT also have these measures whereby, for example, like Mahani Port and stuff, where you can learn before you're attacked so that you're able to protect yourselves before you're attacked, and for us to learn more about our attackers before we're attacked? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, we are aware. I think we're in touch with your team lead, and maybe other issues who have come to help where necessary. Is it from MAST?
Yes.
From MAST, yes. I think you may recall we came in to assist. Was it the other year they went to? Is it Italy or so? I think that, yeah. So there's an MOU which is being signed between MACRA and the MAST. One aspect is to look at those capacity building, maybe even including internship. So since we are setting a lot of things, I think the DG talked about movement to Lilongwe. So we are planning on ground, but sooner or later, we should be able to take more, maybe intense to have an experience. Thank you. Otherwise, okay, yeah, proceed.
All right, thank you for the wonderful presentation. My question is on the, I think, last but one slide where you are talking about lessons learned, and you are saying that one of the lessons that we have learned is the use of open source solutions. So I just want to know, is this by choice or you do not have money maybe? Because in the morning someone talked about the budget. So is this by choice or you don't have funds for the other tools?
Okay, thank you. Maybe Marcus could talk more about this, because Africa said to have been, it's an issue which has been talked about now. Each of, I would say, to maintain the national set, looking at resources. So initially I've said, start small, okay? Because you need to have skills and you need to learn, and then you improve yourself. So yes, if you have money, proceed. But if you don't, it should not be an excuse. You can start somewhere. So open source is there for you. You can start, and then if you get resources, you can improve, and then, you know, the major challenge which comes in, the proprietary software, they are very expensive. Okay, maybe some could be cheap, but for you to justify to the management, you need to have a case. So we usually recommend, say, start small, and then as you lobby with the management, and then you have a case where you know what you are doing, and you justify why you need such kind of resources. It's just a recommendation. It's not a must that you need to do that. Just a recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that presentation. It tackled a review of the recent initiatives in emerging trends in Malawi's cybersecurity landscape. At this juncture, distinguished guests, I would like to call upon Professor Wallace Chigona, who's a professor in information systems at UCT in South Africa. He will present on Southern African Development Cybersecurity Maturity Report. This is a 2021 report. After his presentation, we'll have an online presentation and then we'll break for tea. But this time around, ladies and gentlemen, the Cybersecurity Maturity Report 2021.
Okay, so good afternoon, colleagues. So I'll be talking about the SADC Cybersecurity Maturity Report. So I think just a disclaimer, this is based on the 2021 assessment. So this is 2 years too late. So maybe other things might have changed. But we believe that the lessons or the overview will be the same. I think doesn't mean much change, but other things may be out of date. So I think just bearing that in mind. And again, I think I'd like to appreciate the technology presence of one of the co-authors in the audience, Chimwemwe Mteya. So I think if you've got difficult questions, I think she'll handle the questions. So I think let's see how we move from there. So what I'm going to do is I'll briefly again talk about C3SA. I covered that in the morning session. I'll talk about the model which we use for the assessments, the SMM, which again I did cover in the morning. Then I'll talk about the SADC, just an overview, but I think maybe that's not too necessary in this audience. I guess it's been mentioned in previous presentations. Then I'll talk about the methodology we use for the study. I'll talk about the findings and some lessons learned. So again, C3SA, Cybersecurity Capacity Center of Southern Africa, is a consortium, is a group of people coming together. So we are sitting at University of Cape Town in South Africa. But the team is made up of researchers from Oxford, from the Global Cybersecurity Capacity Center, from Information Systems at UCT, from Research ICT Africa, which is a think tank based in Cape Town, and the Norwegian Institute of Public Affairs, NOPI, which is based in Norway, and they focus on public policies. So the four institutes came together to form C3SA, right? And our main aim was to be the main contact point on research on cybersecurity capacity in Africa. As I mentioned, that there's lots of research happening as well in Africa, in the world, but there's little happening in Africa. So that was what we were trying to achieve. So we're trying to be the single entry point of cybersecurity in Africa. So we are part of a concentration. So there are 3 of these centers. We are in Africa, to cater for Africa. We've got our colleagues based in Melbourne, the Oceania region, and we've got the global center based in Oxford. So we kind of share knowledge. We work together as 3 centers, but our focus is to look into the Africa region. Okay. So what we do research, we do capacity building and so on, but one of the main products we do is assessment of CMM, the Cybersecurity Capacity Maturity Model for countries. Okay, so CMM is an instrument which countries can use to assess their own maturity levels. I mean, I feel a bit constrained standing here. I'm used to walking around when I'm teaching, but I think I'll survive. So it's an instrument. It's like a benchmark, which countries can use to self-assess where they stand on cybersecurity maturity model. So it's been around for some time and sort of gets revised over time. So the key point to take is that there are other frameworks out there. Right? So this is one of the frameworks a country can use for self-assessment. And we do assess countries on 5 dimensions, which we have shown there. Right? So the dimension 1 is on cybersecurity capacity and strategy. Right? So we are looking at do countries have the policy and strategies to combat cybercrime? Are they mature enough on that one? On number 2, we focus on culture and society. So we're looking at the awareness, we're looking at the mindset and the cybersecurity culture of the country. So we're looking at the civil servants and looking at the other citizens on how they understand and how they engage with cybersecurity issues. Number 3 is on capacity building. So we're looking at education and training. Is there training in the country? Are there professionals who are trained on cybersecurity maturity? And dimension 4 is on a legal and regulatory framework. Right? So here we are looking at whether the countries have got the necessary laws and regulations to manage and to cybersecurity issues. And dimension 5 is about standards, right? So, I mean, Christopher was talking about the open source. Is that complying to some standards? Are there standards in the country which the software for cybersecurity has to adhere to? So I think that's what the dimensions are. So when we assess on those 5 dimensions, and we provide a score for each dimension. So you may be thinking, the dimension is a bit high level. Each dimension has got factors, right? So, like if you take number 1 on public and strategy, that's broken down into those 4, right? Strategy, incident response and crisis management, critical infrastructure, and security and defense and national security. So all those 5 are broken down into further categories, which are broken down further into those things you are saying, even further out there. Right. So those are called, so we break down the dimensions into factors, and then we break them down further into aspects. So like, we have got a detailed description of what it means to comply to all those things. So that's important. So when we're assessing on those granular levels. And then we're able to say, for this level, you as a country, you're at a startup level, or you're formative, and go all the way to dynamic. So that's how we assess those things. I'm conscious of time, so I'll move on to the end. So we end up with that kind of diagram as an assessment. So that's representing all the dimensions and where the country is. So those graphs are showing how mature or not mature a country is, right? So that's SMM assessment. So we do this, we go to a country and we engage and we end up with that assessment. As I think people have been saying, Malawi has had 2 of these assessments. I think this diagram again is a bit out of date, but the point is SMM has been implemented in many countries. In Africa, we are one of the providers. There are other people who do the same thing. So we're not the only provider of this service. So we have competition, so to say. So I think now that I've talked about the CMM, so that's what we do. We assess countries using that framework, right? So, we began in 2020 during COVID. We have done assessments. Some of them we did online because of COVID, and we have had others which we have done in person. We are doing one now in another country. I don't know whether I can mention the name, but yeah. So we do those assessments. So in this study, we were doing almost something not, a bit out of ordinary. Instead of using the framework to assess a country, we are assessing countries in a region. We're saying, can we use the framework to assess a region? So we chose SADC. Why we chose SADC? We are based in SADC, so I think that was an easier option. But again, SADC is the largest grouping. If you look at all the groupings in Africa, ECOWAS, the Eastern African Bloc, SADC is one of the largest. So we thought that was important. So what we did was we went to find all the CMMs done, and we looked at those reports. We checked all the reports we could find online. And then from there, we developed our report on SADC. There was missing information, so we ended up calling people in the countries to find the missing information. So that's what we did. It was quite a thorough process of looking at all the reports which we've done, which our colleagues have done from Oxford, from World Bank, ITU, they have all these reports. So we gathered all those reports and went through those reports to end up with a regional report. So just an overview. If you look at the 16 countries, I think those are just some of them which have done the same aims. Some of them have not done the same aim yet, but those are the countries which have done the same aim. So just quickly, Dimension 1, security and policy and strategy, that's what we assess. If you look at this, right, the key point is almost all countries in SADC are startup level. We haven't done a lot in terms of policy and strategy across the board in SADC. There are very few countries which are a bit informative or advanced. So we are behind. I'll move quickly and maybe not do all the dimensions. So very few countries have got the cert established, 2021. I think many countries are still talking and thinking about establishing that. In terms of even having the policies, very few countries have the policies. So we are not doing well. So I think that's just who has got the cert, who doesn't have cert. And that is about the strategies, which countries have got strategies or not. So we still got somewhere to go. We've got the strategies on paper. The implementation in most cases hasn't been well thought, pushed through. So that's, again, important factor to note. On Dimension 2, on culture and security, so here we are interested whether the people are aware of cybersecurity, whether people trust online services in the country, whether the people, the citizens and civil servants, have got the right mindset. Same story. We are on formative startup stages. So we are not doing well there. One issue which we noted is language. So most information on cybersecurity is in English. The people in the villages don't speak English, don't understand English that well. So I think we need maybe to translate the information into some consumable, like into something which people can process. So I think there's need for the civil society, for the universities, for the organizations to push this. So I mean, that's interesting that people don't trust and maybe they don't have enough knowledge about what's available. Time is moving faster than I thought it would. In terms of training, as I said, Africa as a whole has got only 7,000 trained cybersecurity experts. So SADC, the number is even much more less than that. Same story, right? But what we are seeing is that there's a growing number of countries where universities are starting up courses on cybersecurity. Many people are studying cybersecurity, like the international certificates, but the issue again is about funding. People don't have money to pay for the international certifications, forex issues and so on, and maybe often these are older people than younger people. So I guess we need much more training at a younger level, at a university first degree kind of level on cybersecurity. Dimension 4, which is on the legal and regulatory framework. So many countries have got laws and regulations on cybersecurity. So that's interesting. However, in many countries, we don't have the capacity within the policing service for them to enact those laws, or the judiciary for them to do those things. So I think we have done maybe the first step. We've got the laws and the regulations, but we need the capacity to implement, the capacity to enact on those things. So I mean, it's kind of interesting that we're mentioning that Malawi had training for judges. I think that's a way forward. I would recommend that maybe SADC, maybe as a collective, maybe could provide those kind of training. Could be much more cost-effective, maybe, to do those things at that level. Same story. If you look at the countries with child protection laws, very few. So I think we need to. So lawyers say this, that there's never a vacancy, there's never a vacuum for a law. We can always use another law. But I think the more we have got specific laws targeting cybersecurity, I think the better we are at following through this. So I think we need laws to protect people online, organizations and so on. So I think we need to push that. So I'll skip number 5, but it's the same story, which we said. So I wanted to show you this slide. So the blue one is SADC. The green one is the rest of Africa. And I think it's yellow. I'm a bit color. I get my colors confused. The yellow one outside is the rest of the world, right? So the story here is, if we compare SADC with the rest of Africa, we are generally doing worse in most dimensions. So the rest of Africa is doing better than SADC. And if you compare, of course, with the rest of the world, we are not doing great. So this is depressing, maybe. I mean, there are dimensions we are doing well, but overall we are not doing as better compared to the rest of the continent. So while this might appear depressing for the majority of people in the audience who are from the SADC region, I view it as an opportunity that there is things we can do to change that image. I think we've got the capacity and the potential to do better. So I think maybe we shouldn't get depressed with that. We can improve on this. So I think I've got recommendations which I'll not go through in the interest of time. But what I think is, maybe I think the question about resources. I think many countries don't have enough resources to push this through. But I guess as a collective, we can do things. I mean, as a collective, you could have degree courses or certificate courses on cybersecurity, which we can benefit from those kind of initiatives. So I guess we can do that. We could, as a collective, have templates of regulations which we can adopt and adapt for our specific needs. So The important point, again, I think you may be saying, where are the reports? You have never seen the reports of the countries. Many countries refuse to have their reports published for whatever reason. I think Malawi hasn't published their reports, I think, just me. But other countries publish. So if you go to this website, you can find the reports of many countries. I think we'll be adding the Lesotho report this week or so. They just have their 2 reports going on. So I hope that Malawi would be the next one to have their report published. It's important that the information should be available for consumption. So again, thanks to my colleagues who did most of the work of working on this report. So thank you very much for your attention. Thank you. Okay, so yeah, I've got time for questions or comments. Yes.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation, Prof. Just a quick question.
Yes, please.
Especially on the issue of culture and the limited resources. This is happening at a time when we are pushing that we should get things digitalized. I look at that as a gap that will give an opportunity to those who are behind these cyber threats. I don't know, how do you look at it, that we are pushing that let's get things online, let's get things digitized. At the same time, we have got limited resources. At the same time, we have got people who are not that conversant with these things. So I'm looking at that isn't that gap giving an opportunity to those who launch these attacks?
That's an interesting question. So the point is, we have got no choice. The world is moving on. So whether we want it or not, the world will be digital. And I mean, the example somebody gave about money transfer, it's happening. So there's nothing we can do about advances. And the bad guys are moving ahead. We've got no choice. I think where we have got choice is, can we empower the people? Can we change the culture of cybersecurity? I mean, that's from the bottom, from my grandmother in the village to the director of parastatal or government. So I think we need that training. We've got no choice. So I think we need to empower the police. We need to empower everyone else to understand their position and their role in combating cybersecurity. So yes, I agree. It's almost like we are playing a catch-up game to the bad guys, but maybe we should try to, can we get ahead of them and then be safe? I think maybe that's what we can do, but we've got no choice. Yes, there is a hand at the back.
Thank you so much for the presentation. You pretty much answered almost all my questions, but I still have 2 questions for you. The first one being, is your goal to better the technologies of these countries or just help countries become aware of the complexity of their technologies?
So the question is, what's the role of SMM, of this assessment? So what we aim to do is more to inform the country where the gaps are. So we inform you that I think we've got weak policies. We can inform you that you are weak on the awareness, or you are weak in terms of the standards you are using. So now that you are aware, what we do is in the same aim is we have got recommendations for the countries to follow. So we are trying to make the countries aware of where they stand. At the same time, we are trying to empower them so that they can think of what to do next, so that they can improve their stature of cybersecurity. We don't provide resources in terms of technology. It's up to them to respond to our recommendations, for them to invest in the resources or to invest in the training and so on. So yeah, that's the aim of an assessment.
Okay, the final question is, from your experience, when you did assessments online, what can you advise countries in Africa to ease their assessments?
So during COVID, we have to do the assessments online. So I think we did assessment online for, the first one we did was for Somalia. So that was interesting because, we had, so typical assessment is done in a room. So like we'll come to a country, we'll be in a room, we'll bring experts, and we discuss the different dimensions. So that's how we do it. It's done over 3 days typically. Like we'll be meeting academia in the morning, maybe we meet the defense people in the afternoon and so on for 3 days. So it's kind of more interactive, you get the vibe. Doing them online was a big challenge because people had no internet connectivity. People just shut off that responding, so we had to work extra hard to get the people to respond to us. It allowed us to reach more people, I would say, and it was cheaper than us going into a country. So I would advise, if I had a choice, I'd rather do it in person. It's fun for us to travel. We enjoy traveling. But again, the level of engagement is way higher when we're doing this in person. And I think for many countries, people say that it's the first time different stakeholders have been in one room. That in the same room we had the guys from intelligence and the police. For the first time they were in one room talking about cybersecurity. So, given a choice, I'll do this in person, not online. But things are dynamic nowadays, I guess. Other?
Anyway,
yes.
Yes, Prof. I have 2 questions for you. The first one is to do with how can we get senior leadership support to have these cybersecurity policies or strategies implemented? Because it seems implementation of these policies and strategies is hinging on support from government in terms of funding. Yeah. So what's our business case to push leaders in implementing this? The second question is on research in cybersecurity in universities. In Africa, especially in SADC, there's less research on cybersecurity. So you being at the University of Cape Town, you have seen and you have fought maybe to have this in the institution. So what can Malawi do so that we have these in our institutions and improve them? Thank you.
So how do we get countries, how do we get the leaders excited about cybersecurity? If you look at politicians, I think that they're interested in things which bring them votes. Right? So that's a reality. If you look at the ICT policies for many countries, they stay for years before they're approved. They don't care, they don't bring them votes. So I guess we need to get the machinery going. I think we need your macros, other people, much more structured so that they can push for that. I believe if we get politicians talking, if we get the opposition and the civil society excited about cybersecurity, if we can show them the link between cybersecurity and the economy, between cybersecurity and the lack of medicine in the hospital, so we need to show that link. Then they'll start listening, they'll pay attention. Because, they're keen about maize and food, they're keen about hospitals. So I think let's show them that link so that it makes sense and cybersecurity is relevant. Otherwise, it sounds very abstract. You're talking about firewalls and whatever. It's abstract. I wouldn't be excited. I wouldn't vote like somebody saying, oh, I'm going to put firewalls in the country. I think I wouldn't vote for that person. But if I can say I'm going to secure your maize reserves by maybe providing cybersecurity, maybe we need to change our thinking. The question about research is about money. I think let's face it, it's about money, it's about having postgraduate qualifications. So I think we need to have our universities having master's degrees. I think I'm going to be so many people from MAST here. I think they've got master's degrees going now. So I think you've got more postgraduate qualifications and having students studying at the universities. I think that will help us to do research at a much more cost-effective way. And of course, I think we have to convince governments to provide funding for research on cybersecurity. I think we'll get there. We are getting there. Yeah, okay. Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Prof, for that one. We have one more presentation before we go for a break. This is going to be online. We have Mr. Maythem Elmero. Rather, he is a consultant with ITU. He's going to present on navigating cyber risk in the financial sector, a use case analysis. So, our online facilitator, are you ready? Technical team? A quick reminder as they're looking into the technical aspect of it, in case you still haven't registered, a gentle reminder, please get yourself registered. Please do register. The registration desk is just right outside the door. So please, please, please don't participate without proper registration in case you haven't registered.
He's not online.
What is he? I'm told he is not online. So, do we just break for tea yet? We break for tea and then we sort that out. And that when we come back, we'll have 4 presentations, including this one we're postponing, and then we call it a day. So, we have 15 or so minutes. He's online now? Okay. Oh, all right. I'm told he's online now.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Yeah. Hello.
Hi, are you ready with the presentation?
Yes, absolutely.
Perfect, we give you your 20 minutes.
Okay, thank you so much. So I was trying to be physically present in the conference room, but because of flight connection, I'm doing it remotely thanks to the technology. So my presentation today will be about a cyber attack case targeting financial institution and how we need to deal with those cyber threats that targeting mainly the financial institution. So I'm Haytham Elmir. I'm doing cybersecurity for 20 years now, and one of the most exciting things I did in my life is dealing with cyber attacks, responding, helping companies to recover from attacks, tracking cyber criminals. And today I will try to present a real case and some, let's say, recommendation and lesson learned from this case. So let's go directly to the case. So this is a case which targeted a major bank in the region. So in one day, so on Thursday at 7 a.m., the IT department discovered that they were hit by a big cyber attack and all the information system is impacted. So at 7 a.m. In the morning, they discovered that all Windows systems were hit by a ransomware and all the important data on servers and workstations were encrypted. At 8 a.m., all the information system was down and also all the business was down also. And about 200 branches were disconnected and unable to deliver service to their customers. At 9 a.m., the information started to be spread on the social media and people started to talk about a cyber attack. At 10 a.m., radios started to talk about the bank and the eventual cyber attack. And many customers went to their branches, to their bank to withdraw their money and close their account because they heard about a compromise of the information systems and the risk they will lose their money. And also, at that time also, the bank decided to start an internal investigation and try to find a solution using its own means. And the bank, they have never faced similar situations, and the team was not really trained on handling such kind of incident, but they decided to do it by themselves. So by doing that, they lost a lot of time trying to solve the situation by their own means. So from 10 a.m. to 6 a.m., the team was not able to do anything, and they lost a lot of time. And at that moment, they decided to call the CSIRT, and the CSIRT went immediately on site to start the investigation. Now, I will try to show you how the CSIRT did the investigation and how it managed to understand what happened and how it managed to give recommendations to solve the situation. So to resume the attack was following what we call the cyber kill chain. Almost it's the same chain that we find every time when we are dealing with ransomware attack, with data leakage, and many kind of attack. We generally find the same behavior, the same steps followed by the attackers. It starts from the reconnaissance to the exploitation, to getting an access to an entry point, to start to gather information internally, to escalate privilege, and generally when we talk about big information system, the targeted privilege is to be an administrator on the Active Directory domain. Then once they get this privilege, they start to do the lateral movement to locate data and critical systems. Then they establish what we call the persistency. It's a way that will be used by attackers to go directly to the information system without going through the entry point in case of the entry point is detected and fix it. And then when they establish the persistency, they apply what we call the operational impact. In case of ransomware, it's encrypting all the data. So for the case I will present today, so here is the scenario. So a user was identified and he was targeted by a phishing email. So the phishing email contains a malicious Excel file with a macro, and the user executed the macro and enabled the macro, and the macro managed to upload a malicious binary and to take full control of the user workstation. And from this workstation, the attacker used to run some network discovery and internal scan to trying to find a way to escalate the privilege. And by accessing to some servers, they used to dump the LSAS and to get an admin account on the domain name. So being an administrator on the domain name, the attacker were able to navigate inside the network and to get control, full control on all Windows and servers and workstations. Then they established the persistency using Cobalt Strike, which is an exploitation kit, commercial, frequently used by attackers for intrusions and also for maintaining access on the information system. And the operational impact was by deploying the ransomware and encrypting all the data they found, all sensitive data they found on workstations and also on servers. So here is a graph that illustrates how the attack was run. So as I said, the first step was a compromise on the user workstation using phishing email and malicious attachments. And from this workstation, the attacker were able to connect to only one server. So this workstation belongs to a developer, and he was using a test server for his code. And using an account they managed to dump from the workstation, they accessed the first server. And from the first server, the attacker was able to go to a second server, what we call the test server. There is some kind of limitation the attacker were facing. And here the idea of the attacker is to try to find a server on which they can dump a domain account and generally an admin account on the domain. From that server, they managed to access to another server. And from this third server, they succeeded to dump the administrator account from the Active Directory. And from that server, they tried to infect all the network by the ransomware, but was not successful because this server had some kind of limitation and some kind of filtering, blocking access from this server to the old network. So they managed to get to another server, which is called the test database. And using the admin account, they were able to see all the bank accounts in the headquarters, in the remote site, in the branches. And then the final step was to deploy, to copy the ransomware on all the workstations and servers and execute the ransomware by doing the encryption on those systems. So here the question is how did we manage to find all this scenario, and how CSIRT team need to work in order to understand what happened, in order to collect evidence and try to trace back the attacker, to find the entry point, to find the persistency, and also to mitigate the solution and propose some kind of action plan to solve it and to restore the system. So here, what we do generally in such cases, in ransomware cases, we do what we call the retrospective analysis. So this is analysis that we do to investigate on ransomware cases. So we start by analyzing compromised servers or workstations and try to analyze logs until we go back to the original source, to the entry point. So in this case, we started by investigating the antivirus server. So in the attack, the attacker succeeded to compromise and to infect the antivirus server. I think it was humiliating for the antivirus server to be infected. So in this case, we start analyzing the antivirus server. So here, what we do generally, we go to the event log, try to find any kind of access using remote desktop, SMB, WMI. It depends. So in this case, by analyzing the antivirus server, we found that the server was accessed a few minutes before the infection using the administrator account from the domain name. And by doing the analysis on the event logs, we succeed to find the IP, the local IP, which belonged to another server, which did the access. And here, by doing this analysis, we were quite sure that this IP was the IP who attacked the antivirus server. So the investigation showed that before the server is compromised, an access from this IP, 181, was identified using the bank admin account. And so in our case, this IP is the source of the attack on the antivirus server. So the next step is to go to this server and to do the same analysis. So here we decided to go to the test database server to do the analysis. The same thing. So here on this server, we found that on the server we have many suspicious processes run on the server. We found also a script which was executed on the server. It was encoded using base 64, and then we tried to decode to understand the behavior of this script. And here we found also the evidence that also this server was compromised almost at the same time. By doing the analysis also, we found a set of files, malicious files, used by the attackers, like the IP list, which contain the list of all systems from the network, more than 5,000 systems compromised by the ransomware. Also a set of other files like BICC, SVC, e.bat, DLL file also, BICC, and many other files, malicious files that we identified. And we discovered that this is the list used by the attacker. For example, one of the most interesting file is AMU6, which contains script. It was created to read the list of IPs from the IP list. Then it mounts a remote share on $. So since the attacker is using the administrator account of Active Directory, he was able to mount the default share $, using a valid password of the administrator domain name. Then it copies the bank DLL file under Windows folder. Then it uses WMI to invoke the run DLL and execute and load the DLL file, which was already copied. And this was the way used by the attacker to deploy the ransomware, to copy DLL file, and then using WMI to execute run DLL and call the DLL file to be loaded and executed and then the infection is done on the server. So here, the server 181 was used to attack all the bank networks. So we found that this server was the last server accessed by the attacker, and from this server, all the information system was compromised using this server and using also the administrator account on the Active Directory. So by identifying an access using another account, we found that there is another IP which accessed to the server 181. So this server was also compromised by another server. So we went to this new server, and as you see, we are tracing back the attack, and we are doing all the reverse lateral movement done by the attacker. So here also, by analyzing the server .70, we found that this server also was attacked by another server, which is .140. And we went also to the server 140 to do the same analysis, and we found also an access from another server, which is the 130. So here the idea is during the investigation, we try to analyze all the event logs, all the artifacts left by the attacker, and try to understand how they did their lateral movement until we reach the first entry point, which was in our case the workstation of that user. And here also the same behavior that we are trying to analyze until reaching the entry point, which was the user. So here, the final step in our case was to go to the workstation of that user and try to understand what happened. So during the investigation, we found that on the workstation, with a lot of alerts from the antivirus, and one malicious file was already identified and cleared by the antivirus. But also we found multiple malicious activity on the raised by the antivirus, almost 373 attacks or compromissions blocked and identified by the attacker. And here we start to understand that the attacker was trying to bypass the antivirus, and each time he was able, the antivirus was able to identify and block the malicious content. But at a certain time, the attacker succeeded to execute a PowerShell using the local account of the user. And this PowerShell was the last try by the attacker, because it helped the attacker to disable the antivirus and to execute the malicious payload and to take control on the workstation. So here, once it was working, so the attacker downloaded the malicious code using the web browser, and the download was initiated by the DLL host, executable DLL host. And even when we checked the quarantine of the antivirus, we found that the antivirus was already alerting about the attack. So the workstation was compromised by a malware downloaded from the internet. And this workstation was the entry point. For us, the investigation ended here because now we have the full picture of the attack. And then we found that the attack was done by a phishing attack launched against the user who had the local admin account on the computer. And during the investigation, the infection continued. When we were doing the investigation, we heard always about new system being compromised, being encrypted, because at that moment the bank did not disconnected all the network. So here, this is rapidly what we did in terms of investigation on the case. But from the crisis management side, for us as a CSIRT team, it took us about 4 hours to do all the investigation. As you see in the beginning, the bank took, I think, about 8 hours before calling the CSIRT. So they lost a lot of time. But because the CSIRT was trained to manage such incidents, it took only 4 hours to do all this investigation and to understand what happened. And an action plan was provided to the bank to eradicate the ransomware, and they also to restore the system progressively. The action plan recommended to keep all systems disconnected and to connect only clean system. But this was not really suitable for the bank, because we were on Thursday and the bank was trying to reconnect the system on Friday. So here we recommended to clean the system on 3 days, so the bank will be able to recover on Monday. but the officers decided to reconnect the system on Friday, which was not a good decision. So here, the plan done by the IT officers failed, and they started to see many cleaned systems started to be compromised again. And at the end, as a result, it took 1 month to restore all the information system. While if they applied the recommendation to keep the system disconnected on Friday, to continue cleaning Friday, Saturday and Sunday, and reconnect on Monday, this recommendation for us was really better than what they did. And the result, as you see, it took 1 month to clean and reconnect all the system. So here, also from the communication side, as I told you, some customers went to withdraw their money. So here, in the communication side, it was really very bad choices done by the communication. So here, what they did the first unofficial communications 48 hours after the attack, while people were already talking about the incident from the first hours. The first communication denied the fact and was talking about the technical problem, while all the people, they heard about the cyber attack. And then the second unofficial communication, a few days later, was talking about successful response to many cyber attacks, while all people were talking about successful attacks. So because of this weak communication, the bank suffered a lot from the impact on their reputation. They suffered for a very long time on the impact on their reputation. So here, to learn from those mistakes, as you saw, I gave you maybe not a good case in terms of incident management from the bank, but I think this is very useful to learn from those mistakes. So here we found many mistakes which led to this situation. So we identified a lot of problems like weak endpoint protection, bypassing the antivirus, weak email protections, how this malicious file in the attachment went through the email gateway, anywhere user using privileged account on the workstation, unsegmented network, weak internal filtering and access control, many vulnerable servers, unprotected test servers, misconfigurations, absence of monitoring, because as you saw, the antivirus was raising a lot of alerts, but no one was following, unprepared bank, so no incident response time and response plan, a lot of time lost by trying to do it by themselves, unprepared for the crisis management, and also no involvement from the communication department. And honestly, we cannot face modern cyber threat with such security. So here today, the financial sector is the first target, is the most targeted sector on the world by cyber criminals. So here, if we want really to face those modern and emerging threats, we need to change to a new strategy to deploy more sophisticated approach and rules and controls to face those threats. So the financial sector, as I said, remains the most targeted sector. What we can find in terms of top 5 threats, it was already mentioned by previous presentation, we found always the phishing, the ransomware, the application vulnerabilities, DDoS attack, and also supply chain attack. And recently we found that there is a new threat that we start to observe on African financial institutions, is what we call the paid insider. We found many cases where cyber criminals are paying internals, insiders, and employees, giving them a lot of money in order to execute some malicious software, or to give them remote access using remote access administration tool. So here, this is how we need to think about the threats, and banks, as I said, they need to change their strategy. So here, what is a bank from a threat perspective? So this is very nice picture that shows the complexity of a bank. A bank is very complex information system, a lot of networks, applications, business unit functions. And in terms of threats, you have a combination of many environments and many technologies and many business processes. And for every component of the information system, you have different threats. So that's why for a bank, it's very important to understand their information systems, to understand the threats, in order to prevent, to respond correctly to cyber threats. In a bank, as you see, you will find core banking system, you'll find internet banking system, the point of sales, credit card, SWIFT network, web portal. So many components, and each component, they have their own threats and their own controls and their own way to prevent and to respond to cyber attacks. To make some kind of simplification and to modelize the situation, what is the most valuable thing for a bank? Generally, it's data. And to reach this data, you have many vectors. And for each vector, you can find many techniques that can be used by attackers to reach those data. And for every technique, attackers have many possible vulnerability that can be exploited. And here, the role of security is to be to protect the data, to identify vulnerabilities, techniques, and vectors, and to put the right controls in order to block all the attacks. So this is what we call our security layer, which is a layer between our information systems and between attackers. Hopefully, this layer will succeed to block a lot of attacks, but many other attacks will go through this security layer if the security layer is not well designed. So what we really need to avoid what we call the basic security layer, a security based on antivirus, firewall, IPS, segmentation. It's mandatory, it's very important, but it's not enough. This is the case of the bank that we helped to respond to the attack. They invested a lot on their security, but it was very basic security. What we really need now to be able to face those emerging cyber threats is to have more advanced security layer based on threat intelligence, monitoring, sandboxing, having the C13, blue team, red team, having more developed technologies like EDR, XDR, do exercises on CyberDrill to train the team, do threat hunting. So this is really the weakest point we found on the bank, and this is the missing security. Today, we cannot face those modern cyber attacks using very basic security layer, using very basic technologies and very basic control. So here, we need more advanced security. In terms of approaches, we need to adopt different approach. And today, there is many approaches that we can use, we can combine. We need to understand, like the proactive security, like the security in depth, the zero trust approach, the security by design, the security by default. All of those approaches are very important to understand and to try to include in our security approach. It's not a choice that we will do by choosing what approach, but let's say it's a combination. It's an approach that we will build based on those approach. And for each approach, we have technology and we need to process to be in place. So here, to conclude, to do and to be able to prevent, to respond, to have a good security layer, to have a good security approach, we do not have to forget that this should be based on process, people, and technology. Technology is there. Technology, if you have money, you can buy it. If you don't have, you can use open source. Open source are very mature technology today. You need process also to be organized, to detect, to respond correctly, to prepare for crisis, to prepare your incident response plan, but also you need people, which is, I think, the most difficult part. You need people because people should be trained, should be aware, should also exercise some kind of investigation, some kind of incident response. So this is, I think, very crucial and very important to work on capacity building and to have people prepared. And also do not forget to use security frameworks, because if you want to build your security correctly as a financial institution, you can rely on existing framework like NIST, ISO, COBIT, SWIFT CSP, PCI DSS. You can also use ENISA documentation. So you have many kind of reference. So to avoid getting lost, the better thing is to prepare all your means in terms of process, people, and technology, and to adopt a security framework that will help you to enhance your security and to be able to face what we see in terms of cyber threat. Today, we are not facing strict script kiddies anymore, but we are facing some of the most critical cyber criminals and some of the most sophisticated cyber criminals in the world. And with that, it's not with the basic security that we will save our information system, but we need to think more advanced approaches, more advanced technology, and to have people really trained and ready to face those cyber threats. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much. Maybe we could just get a question or two or a comment before we finally say goodbye to you. Do you have a comment for him? Or a question? Questions, comments? None? Thank you so much. Oh, I'm sure I've lost him already. Distinguished delegates, we break for coffee. We only have 10 minutes to do so. Can I suggest that maybe we can just get our coffees and get seated so we take our coffees while presentations are taking place? What do you think? That would be ideal. So we've got only 10 minutes. If we could just grab a snack quickly and resume our seats, the next presentation will happen whilst we're taking our coffee right in here. We have more time to mingle after the presentations. Remember, we've got a cocktail. So we could just go quickly outside, grab our coffee and a snack, and then we resume our seats so presentations can take place. So 10 minutes, we're going to continue with the presentations. Thank you.
Number 2.
1, 2. 1, 2.
One, two. One.
May I have your attention? Ladies and gentlemen, we won't be able to wait for everyone to finish their coffee, especially the ones that are being served at the back, so we will proceed. We have a presentation, how to conduct effective open source investigations online. It's supposed to take us about 20 minutes, so please pay attention. We have other online delegates. They're following through Zoom, and we weren't able to recognize their presence. I'm sure they also had some contributions which we failed to take note of. So the other presenters that have already presented, just take note that at some point we may invite our online delegates to make some comments, also ask some questions, because they still are willing to make contributions to the program. Unfortunately, we couldn't recognize them the time you were making your presentation, so bear with us. Once we are able to connect with them, they should be able to give their comments or post some questions. In the meantime, our next presentation, ladies and gentlemen, those that are standing at the back, can we please have your attention, and if you can, resume your seats, please, in the interest of the conference and time. Thank you so much. Over to you.
Checking the sound. Amazing, thank you so much. So I have a tall order to shrink the presentation, that's not a problem. Some of you who will be doing open sources intelligence track on Thursday and Friday, you will see and hear of me quite a bit. So today is only a short intro to argue the case for open sources intelligence in the community of yours. You know, the geeks, the cybersecurity specialists, who I am not. Okay, my name is Vitanis Benetis. I'm today representing United Nations Counterterrorism Center and speaking on behalf of them. And so I will try to present and discuss the topic of open sources intelligence and see how that ties into the remit and the sort of investigations and how we can complement the investigations, what you guys are usually doing on cybersecurity communities. So the big question stands, at least for me, is why do we need to become effective online investigators? I think each one of you have multiple answers to this question. At least one of that is that we're living in a digital life, environment nowadays. But let's try to dissect this a little bit deeper, and let's first of all think about our adversaries. We know that there's quite a bit of malicious stuff happening online. Yes, we just saw a previous presentation with a very concrete case where step by step it was dissected and presented to you. And this is just one of multiple ways how malicious actors can act online. On UNCCT perspective, it's more that terrorism is being looked at. But it's not only, there's all sorts of other criminal activities taking place online. Also, what makes our lives much more challenging, much more complicated, is that we're dealing with an enormous amount of information. And the complexity there is such as challenging that sometimes our brains are incapable even of comprehending the vastness of it. For example, some of you who are well-versed into data, you understand what EB stands for, what PB stands for, but for some of you, it's probably a new concept, because you don't deal with this sort of information every day. You don't deal with that sort of volume of data every day, but you will very soon, as the world is accelerating and growing in the amount of data. If you look at the latest numbers of those who are engaged with this data, you also see just trends up, more users, more internet penetration, more mobile usage, better digital literacies, and so on the adversary level as well. Yes, so we need to be able to handle this. On technological advancements, we see all sorts of areas where we see amazing progress. For example, the big hot buzzword nowadays is artificial intelligence. Some of you have been using this word, machine learning, for the last decade. For some of you, it's a very novel concept, but you cannot avoid it anymore because it's everywhere today. Yes, and of course, that's on adversary side once again. So if you look forward, if we try to do a little bit of projection forward, we will see that the trend of everything is there to grow. More of networks, more of complexity, more of data, more fragmentation as well. Well, for a while we saw some centralization taking place. Let's say social networks as an example. We saw the big players playing there and there and there. But now we see the opposite trend where quite a few actors are seeing, how to go to decentralized level. And digital literacies are basically the only path to be successful in this digital domain. What do I mean by digital literacies? Is this ability to look on information on a digital domain and to be able to make sense of it. Yes, that's what we're talking about. When we talk about future, it's very difficult to be sure, because you may be right, may be wrong. You may be actually projecting something what's going upwards or sometimes what's continuing or even going downwards. Here are a couple examples to show you how we could have anticipated different changes, but we got what we got. For example, we're looking at the messaging app called Telegram. We saw the classical, nice exponential growth, yes? But who could have thought that Telegram will be one of those which is going to get a major boost recently as well to continue that trend? Okay, how about the next one? Tor users. I'm just looking here at the number of people who are using Darknet, specifically Tor network protocol, yes? We saw some spikes in beginning, 2013. Everybody remembers what happened then? Snowden, etc., yes? But then we sort of see the trend sort of flattened out because there are other factors which were acting against its growth, yes? So it's not so massive and it's not so dramatic as social media, as messaging apps, etc. So you have to be aware of these sort of trends. Another thing is that there are novel concepts also appear. In open sources intelligence, for example, we can see this concept of crowdsourced intelligence. Intelligence as a word in the past used to be a sort of restricted domain for government services, yes, for maybe law enforcement and intelligence services. Nowadays, anybody with access to internet, a device, laptop, another internet device, can go and make his or her own name analyzing some geopolitical events, as we've seen. But not only that, we also see something very, very valuable things happening, like, for example, if we see OSINT for Good, for example, hashtag, where we see also all this help, where people from all around the world are helping to solve child exploitation cases, for example, etc., yeah? Who could have thought what we would take a regular person from a street and he or she would be able to contribute to that sort of investigation? But this is exactly what's happening today. Not only counting tanks somewhere on the battlefields, but also helping law enforcement to solve cases, yes? So you have to be aware of these sort of trends happening as well. So let's briefly talk about the concept of intelligence, the way we see it, and the way we think is going to be useful for you to consider it as well when you're going to look into a subset of it, open sources intelligence, yes? First of all, intelligence deals only with things which have some level of uncertainty. It's not a lookup problem. It's not a math problem where you have a template to put on it and solve it, yes? If you have a differential equation and you just take a differential equation pattern to solve this equation, that's not an intelligence question, yes? We're talking here about the questions which demand demand a certain sort of space of uncertainty and an ability to handle that uncertainty, yes? It's also, thank you very much, huh? It's also very tightly linked to decision making. Intelligence by itself is of zero value if it does not inform a better decision making. Because intelligence is not like academic field. We had an incredible professor's presentation here earlier, yes? Academicians sometimes are just curious. They just want to know, yes? And it's okay, because curiosity drives humanity forward. But in intelligence, as a professional field, it's always next step is to inform decision making, to make better decisions. You may be the decision maker yourself, but still it matters, yes? And finally, it's not only about being a subset somewhere. It's not only to be an analyst or to be a head of some sort of intelligence institution. It's not only to conduct some sort of human or OSINT capability. It's all together. That's why successful intelligence capability is all these three things: the activity, the organization, and ability to manage their knowledge. Basically what we're going to be learning over Thursday and Friday with you, and testing your initial knowledge tomorrow through the CyberDrill. Yes? So now, if we focus on open sources intelligence, I know it's impossible to read here, but basically what you see here is a temporal span, a time span. Something what can happen immediately. All of us, even in Africa or Europe or whatever part of the world we know of Twitters and etc., which basically, okay, quick story. I previously lived in Jerusalem, Israel, and I was traveling through there, through Old Town, and I suddenly see all this commotion. Something is happening. So it seems like another terrorist attack or something happened, yes? How do I learn about what's happening? What's my first thing where I look up for information? Social media, yes? Because people tweet, people post, people do whatever it is, The media catches up only later. Of this phenomenon. It doesn't guarantee that's a quality information there, but it guarantees that actually it's going to be much more faster than usually you used to. So same thing here. Open sources intelligence domain covers a broad spectrum. Something what has much more permanence over years, and something can go back into the historical archives, and something what is happening now, today, at this moment, and we have to be able to react to that, yes? We should never forget also that we're dealing here with three levels of sort of considerations: the moral, the ethical, and the legal aspects. So moral and ethical, I'll leave it for separate discussions because we can have a very lengthy one here. But on legal aspect, I have to remind you that even with open sources intelligence, which is accessible to anybody who is sitting anywhere connected to a network, to internet, or going to public libraries or whatever it is, they can get very quickly to the domain where we can overstep the boundaries of legality. What do I mean by that? I mean the human rights, the right to privacy, yes? The right to expression, and all those things, because the way now we express ourselves, the way we get access to information, the way we share information, also makes it so much easier to trample over those rights of humans. So we have to be very considerate and careful about that. And if you do not have a mandate to handle this, so you have to be very careful to step aside, and not to deal with it until you have a right to do so. So what I will be talking on Thursday and Friday quite a bit is about putting structure to this thinking. How to take this subset of intelligence, the open sources intelligence domain, and how put structure through frameworks, through processes, through basically tips and tricks, and how to use it so it's beneficial to you. Typically, the use case, thank you so much. Typically, the use case is that you have, your front warriors for cybersecurity incidents, yes? I'm sorry that I'm generalizing here because you probably come from different backgrounds. But I make a sort of like blank statement that, you are the ones who are facing cases which was presented before me. You're seeing at the front lines, you look at those logs, you look at all the cases. You have very good technical knowledge, you have expertise, but can you make it even further? Can you make it even better by supplementing it with open sources intelligence? And my suggestion is that yes, you can. And this way you can help and contribute to the law enforcement, which usually has a formal authority to investigate those cases and find those malicious actors, yes? Not only, you can help with attributions, etc., etc. You don't have maybe a legal right to prosecute. Law enforcement does. But you are at enormous and incredible place to help them. And if you are proficient in open sources intelligence, you're going to be in a much better position, yes? So just very briefly to run through some ideas here. So structure, of course, helps us to navigate chaos. Look, you learned probably in your high school about entropy. It's always growing. Entropy is chaos. That's the way the world is built. You need to put work in order to manage it. Structure is that work. Also, it's something what helps us to improve. Because if we have an audit trail, we can look how we have achieved certain conclusions, results, information, etc., etc. That's a way for us to track down and see what we have been good at and what we have done not so well, where we can improve. Typically, I say there are two frameworks to consider. One is where we go and look at the big sort of topics and we research them and we try to monitor them. That could be like generically, very blank statement would be like geopolitical issues, yes? Or trends on cybersecurity, I don't know, developments, et cetera, yes? And then there is investigation. Investigation when you have very clear targets. You want to go after them. A person, an organization, you know, and some sort of, was less work. Computers were supposed to help us, but they just gave us more work to process. Yeah? So I'm not here facetious, I'm not Luddite, but the point here is that in intelligence cycle, so-called, where we have roughly 4 sort of main stages, the collection, processing, analysis, and reporting, technology has a different maturity level. In collection, we're great. We can automate lots of collection. We can just grab all sorts of information nowadays in different multiple formats, and we're great at that. But when we go to towards the end, you know, when we go to the levels of analysis especially, this is where we struggle. Okay, on reporting, we can say we've made some little bit of progress now, where we make a nice sort of AI-driven sort of reports nowadays. Maybe we can push this sort of scale a bit to the right. But on analysis, where we need to put these things together and make sense of them, we're still not there where technology is resolving it all. Yes? I think because of time shortage, I will stop here, because the rest of the slides I have a little bit more technical, and they are oriented towards our next developments, especially Thursday and Friday. Tomorrow, we will have 2 hours, 45 minutes, including a short coffee break of CyberDrill on simulated open sources intelligence case. It will be live on real web with real sort of, you know, created actors, but they will be there on real. So I very much encourage for you to participate, be in groups, be individually, if you can. And I'm looking forward to seeing you that. Okay? Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for that one. I'm sure tomorrow is going to be another interesting session. We have 3 more presentations before we call it a day. One is going to be just a recording, but 2 are going to be physical ones. In the interest of time, let me call upon the 6th presentation. It's the importance of cyber threat intelligence for CERTS. So is 10 to 15 minutes good enough for you? Yeah. Okay, fine. We've got 15 max, 10 to 15. So have those questions and comments coming, but that will be after the presentation.
All right. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I know we've had a couple of presentations, so we're not going to bore you with so much information. My name is Johnson Mwamba, and together with me is my colleague Labu, who is a threat emulation specialist. We're going to present on the importance of cyber threat intelligence for SATs. So we're using a platform called CyberRanges. I'm sure for the next few days, most of the scenarios that you're going to be having a hands-on experience will be on our platform, CyberRanges. We've partnered with ITU for the past so many years to deliver real-time simulation platforms. So our CyberRanges platform is a military-grade real-time threat simulation platform that helps you to interact and helps you to protect your environment. So the CyberRanges fully supports MITRE ATT&CK across its entire ranges architecture through its proprietary injector engine. The CyberRanges also automatically emulates the latest Intel attacks, APTs, and specific tactics and exploits from the MITRE ATT&CK matrix. CyberRanges has been awarded the Cybersecurity Made in Europe seal for strategic value contributions to the cybersecurity industry. We provide the next generation of practical and experiential offensive and defensive cybersecurity training through complex real-world lab environments and in-depth training programs. All right, no problem. It's a Linux machine.
Okay, so what we need to do. 1 second. This goes on this. So we need to
Mirror. Okay. What's that?
Yeah, they should be there now. But on the screen.
From current or from just start from here, right? Or from the beginning? Okay, still. All right, sorry for that. So we have and continue to deliver cybersecurity training to military units and technology companies around the world. Our hands-on live training methodology, which you'll most experience during the live scenarios, has proven highly effective as we offer realistic lab environments, live bootcamp style training, and encourage dialogic discussion between the students and instructor. So Cyber Rangers is by Silensec. Silensec is our information security management training and technology company. We operate in most parts of the world. So with that introduction, I'm going to welcome my colleague Labu to take you through an in-depth analysis of the cyber threat intelligence. Welcome.
Thank you, Johnson. Good afternoon, everybody. So we have had a lot of talks, especially the last couple of sessions, which had some technical information about intelligence and understanding what attackers do. So this talk is about cyber threat intelligence, and one of the key parts that composes that is the idea of defense in depth. With the defense in depth, this is basically a concept whereby we use multiple layers of security tools to understand and monitor our critical infrastructure and make better decisions. And that brings us to a similar cycle, as you can see on the slides, where we have proactive measures being used to identify potential attackers, their intentions, and methods, which is known as the prediction, because we don't know who is yet to attack us. The next phase comes on the protection side, which is actually now implementing those security controls and measures to protect and stop these attackers to the best of our capacity. When we have that in place, we can go to the next part, which is the detection side. So what are the ways we can monitor and detect these malicious activities happening in our environments? And finally, the last phase of that brings us to our reaction. So if an attack does happen, what is our next action plan from there? So that whole cycle is how we talk about the cyber threat intelligence being important to us so that we can implement a strategy that allows us to form this defense in-depth sort of visualization. Now, what is threat intelligence? I'll take a little quote from a gentleman by the name Forrester. I'll actually read it out. Details of the motivation, intent, and capabilities of internal and external threat actors. Threat intelligence includes specifics on the tactics, techniques, and procedures, simply known as TTPs. I will be using that word quite a bit, so if I reference that, that's basically a short form of tactics, techniques, and procedures that adversaries would be implementing. Then threat intelligence's primary purpose is to inform businesses about decisions regarding the risks and implications. The previous gentleman, Mr. Vitanis, before me talked about intelligence. And you heard him say that intelligence is when you're able to then make proactive or make the decision process easier. So that's the whole point of digesting this information that we get and being able to leverage that to make better decisions on what we do on the action plans we have set in place. So the bigger picture, when you look at it, threat actors come with different types of agendas. You have some that are financially motivated. You have the teams that are looking through intelligence gathering, maybe espionage, so those could be nation-state threat actors. So based on where they're positioned or what their full objective is, we have different goals and strategies they will use to implement their action plans. And that's where now you come down to your tactics, techniques, and procedures, because your goals determine what actions you're going to do on the environment. And finally, when they do these things, there's always going to be some indicator. So you'll always hear of indicators of compromise. So basically, as they do whatever they're doing on your networks, on your systems, they're going to end up either dropping malware. You know, you heard about the previous one, lateral movement, moving across different machines on the network. So these things always leave some indicators somewhere. If we don't log these, of course, we may be blind to those activities. So again, what we put in place in our infrastructure will determine how much visibility we have, and therefore allow us to easily pull in these indicators of compromise and make decisions on how we can action faster moving along. So one of the important things which was also highlighted earlier was the cyber kill chain, and this was actually a concept that was introduced through the military, and the whole point of this was breaking down the various goals that a threat actor would have in determining what the end goal is. And now we look through that whole action plan and try and identify where we can use measures to either detect, mitigate, or stop them from doing whatever the activities they're planning to do for that particular objective. So simply what they did is they came up with 7 phases. So there's the recon, the weaponization, delivery, exploit, installation, command and control, and their final action or objective. So at every stage of that, there are different things they will do. There were different commands they may run, there may be different tools they will need to use. So if we can know what the threat actor is planning to do, we can strategize to then be one step ahead of them and break this whole chain from happening to the end. A very key tool, as I mentioned by my colleague, is the MITRE framework, which is what we use at Cyber Ranges. And basically, this is an open source intelligence, I would say, framework that was actually sponsored by MIT. And basically, this was introduced to allow all cybersecurity specialists. So you'll always hear that there's teams that are doing defense work, and then there's offensive operators. So this MITRE framework allows for both the defenders and the attackers to speak a common language. So when you hear somebody saying an attacker did a specific phish, there was a specific way they implemented, like you saw in the previous one, where they talked about an Excel file that was sent to the victim. They maybe clicked it and enabled something to run, and that's how the threat actors got access to that user's workstation. So that would be looking at exactly the procedures that would be implemented by the threat actor to allow them to reach the objective of getting command and control over that user's machine. So the MITRE framework gives us a very nice visual procedure of known threat actors. So again, one key thing to remember if you ever use the MITRE framework, most of the procedures or TTPs that are within it are based off real-world threat actors that have been verified, and this is open information available to the public. So it gives you a nice one-shot collection of where to get those resources from. Now, aside from the MITRE framework, as we talk about tactics, techniques, and procedures, there's a pyramid of pain. There's actually something known as the pyramid of pain. This was a concept introduced by David Bianco, whereby if you're looking at implementing security strategies in your organization, some of the things we need to look at are what are the things we're doing and how much of an impact it makes in terms of making the adversary or the threat actor's life difficult. So right at the bottom, we have hash values. So this is, let's say, you get a malware sample, you're able to get maybe 256 some hash of that file, and maybe you feed that into your SIEM or systems to monitor if that file has actually been seen in any other machine on the network. As a threat actor, to bypass that, very easy, as you can see on the screen. So we go higher, 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 and as you get towards the top of that pyramid, it makes the life harder for threat actors. So when implementing your defense strategies, not to say that you should ignore the lower ones, but if we focus just on the low ones and we leave the upper parts of that pyramid available, that's like not focusing on the TTPs, then you're giving the threat actors a field day to enjoy doing whatever they want on your network. So it's always good to look at layering and adding more to make things more difficult for the threat actors. So we talked about threat actors, and the first step towards developing threat intelligence capabilities, understanding the different threat actor groups, because their goals and motivations being different will mean they will use different TTPs. So understanding who is attacking you gives you a better understanding of what you need to be looking out for. Because somebody who's financially motivated may not do the same thing as somebody who's doing espionage. Somebody financially motivated, as soon as they get onto your systems, they're able to get lateral movement and everything, and they ransom you one time. The espionage threat actor, on the other hand, may want to stay on your network to gather as much intel on your system. So they will use a different TTP as compared to the ransomware or the financially motivated threat actors. Another thing another important fact to remember is there's a difference between the attackers that are carrying out the threat actor carrying out the attack versus the threat actor commissioning the attack. So to differentiate that a little bit better, let me take the example of maybe espionage. In the case of espionage, it could be some intelligence gathering going on, and therefore the person who is actually doing the attack may not necessarily be the one who was commissioned to do this, because they are supplying that information back to somebody else. So that's sort of the understanding you need to have for the two different scenarios. So these are groupings of different types of threat actors. I'm sorry I'm rushing it a little bit because of time. We can always ask questions if you need any clarification, or see me afterwards. But basically, there's a classification of threat actor groups that's out there, varying from the cyber criminals to even hacktivists, and even internal threats. We heard about the banks having people getting their employees who are paid by these threat actors to do these malicious activities. So something important, as mentioned previously, is the observables and indicators. So observables are any information that is related to the operations of computers and networks. So these are your logs, whether it's network logs, system events, if it's Windows machines, your processes, your files being dropped, files being created, network connections being opened. Then you have your indicators. So this is now specifically any piece of information that's observable, and when enriched with context, allows us to present an artifact about a specific behavior of interest within a cybersecurity context, such as attacks and intrusions. So context turns an observable from an indicator, so example, an IP address used in an attack, or the hash of those binary files. So all these things, depending on the type of nature of attack, we can attribute those based off the indicators and what we're able to visibly see through our logging systems. Typically, so the next thing is indicators, which typically address, when we're talking about this in the context of cyber threat intelligence, includes things like domain names, IP addresses, email addresses, malware names, URI strings, and much more. And support for indicators vary across CTI solutions. So again, that's why we need to also speak a common language across the board. We cannot just say, use this information. It should be the same. If I got a bank that got hit, you just use the information. That information, it needs to be drilled down to the TTPs, because once we get to know what, especially at the procedural level, the more granular you go, the better it is to formulate strategies on how to protect yourself. So what is cyber threat intelligence about? So CTI is about managing risk exposure, the likelihood of something manifesting, and then again, also the impact, because sometimes we might think an indicator pops up, but then is it of a high impact to us? Not to mention that ignore it, look into it, investigate, drill down, and see what else could be happening. So 3 main use cases is monitoring, because sometimes it may not impact us, but we might, so for example, we can look at the case of the Stuxnet virus. So that virus was designed to go and destroy a nuclear reactor in Iran, but the virus actually spread across to lots of, so the virus spread a lot to a lot of Windows workstations globally, yet it was designed to only run when it was in a specific environment. So you can see the impact to somebody who that malware was not designed for may be very minimal, but if you're monitoring, you can detect this, You can share that information out to other people, and other researchers are constantly sharing this information to be able to make better strategies and also attribute who could be behind that sort of attack. Threat assessments also allow you then to be able to, based off that cyber threat intelligence, you can then use that to also analyze your own environment and see, are you ready and capable to deal with a specific type of threat actor? Then, of course, comes investigations. If in case something does happen, what measures do you have in place to be able to investigate and see if that threat actor was actually operating within your environment? So some of the advantage or use cases for CTI would be something like monitoring network threats, and that's like looking at infected systems or malwares or botnet servers that are out there. So there's lots of sources where you can go and check for that information and then try and correlate that back into your environment. If either maybe it's an IP, if that IP is, if there's some network device communicating outbound from your network and to that specific IP, that should immediately raise a red flag of an indicator of compromise. Some other things that cyber threat intelligence is important for is when you're doing attribution, you could find that sometimes these malware, when you they get hosted on websites or web servers out on the internet. It's good to find out where these sources are and probably try and report it to the relevant authorities or the domain hosting servers that are there. Because sometimes they use our normal, like, GoDaddy and stuff like that. So if you can report that back to the hosting platforms, they can try and do a takedown of this malicious servers or websites. Then you have another option is to look through compromised credentials. Sometimes this is mostly available like in the dark web, but monitoring that and getting that information is key to you, because especially if you're in a financial institution where you receive payments, you want to know whether that card was actually part of a recent breach and if that is actually a genuine payment coming through or not. You have your compromised accounts, which will probably be money mules. Sorry, I'm just going to rush through. You can look through credentials. Sometimes credentials are reused. So a user got compromised, the account gets taken over, and their credentials are used for other things. I'll quickly run through this. Is when we at Cyber Rangers look at cyber threat intelligence, we try and convert that information to be able to build simulations around those sort of attacks, which can then be translated into practical trainings that would be targeting either red teams, blue teams, or even a purple team exercise where you're including both the offensive and the defensive. Building some of this cyber threat intelligence requires a certain skill set, but not necessarily what I'm showing, but this definitely holds a key part of it, whereby you need to have the ability to be able to analyze the cyber threats, create the CTI documents, and then develop some of these tools to be able to attribute them. So one of the key skills that's needed is reverse engineering and malware analysis. And together, when you piece all that together, this is how we build now our simulations. So once we have built our CTI, we take that CTI information, create infrastructure, create injections. So injections is a simulation of the attacks. And then you can now give the logs on the IOCs to the blue team to be able to detect and see if they can correlate and triage the attacks that are happening. So this is just a quick view of how the simulation environment looks like. A use case that we did recently was called breaching NATO. We took the sample threat actor, which at that point was the SVR group. And at that point, this was just around the Ukraine war starting. So they were looking at getting espionage or surveillance over NATO diplomatic states. And we looked through their TTPs, mapped them to MITRE, went and recreated all the attacks they do, tried to reverse engineer the samples and recreate also the malwares. And eventually, using user emulation and injections, we could create a scenario that give a full-blown effect of how SVR would do their operations on your environment and give you access to tools that will give you the ability to learn how to detect those threat actors working in your environment. So basically, that's the training section and the final remarks. So certs cannot do without CTI. As mentioned, there's a wealth of information that's in this, these reports, and basically they can definitely assist you to build resilient strategies around cyber threats. CTI means different things to different vendors, so IP reputation, social media, deep dark web stuff. You also need to understand what your needs are based off those CTI reports, and then ensure the capability to benefit from the CTI. So is it CTI as a service, CTI feeds, investigations, and also platforms to share this information. With that, thank you very much. If you have any questions, do feel free to reach out to me. I hope that was good. Okay. So I've been told I can take one question, so if anybody has a question. Yes.
Another round of applause. Thank you so much. We're racing against time. Africa Set Membership Drive is our next presentation. Mrs. LSC Esme from AfriSet. Are you set for your presentation? We need the computer. So you've got 15 minutes. Okay. That's okay. What's the time now? Yeah, so around 1/2. Please. Sorry, I have to punish you for other people's sins. Okay. This will be our last physical presentation, and then we'll have one recorded one. That's where we'll call it a day. She's got 10 to 15 minutes, and then we'll have one last recorded one. Then we will call it a day.
Bonsoir à tous. Ismaël Degenova pour Africa Cert. Donc je vais parler en français. Alors, je suis là ce soir pour vous inviter, tous autant que vous êtes, à intégrer Africa Cert. Alors, qu'est-ce que c'est qu'Africa Cert? Africa Cert est une initiative qui vise à promouvoir la cybersécurité en Afrique. Il s'agit d'une organisation dont le but est le renforcement de capacité des équipes d'intervention en cas d'incendie de cybersécurité. Le but d'Africa 7, l'objectif global, c'est de combler le fossé en matière de cybersécurité est de fournir une plateforme pour la coordination, la collaboration et l'échange d'informations entre les CSIRT en Afrique. L'organisation travaille à faciliter la mise en réseau des équipes de réponse aux incidents, à partager les meilleures pratiques et les connaissances techniques, ainsi qu'à renforcer les capacités des CSIRT en termes de formation et de sensibilisation à la cybersécurité. Donc, comme je disais précédemment, les services que nous offrons, c'est une assistance technique de la montée en compétences, des formations pour monter en compétences et une collaboration, une coopération avec des équipes internationales. Et il faut savoir qu'AfricaCert est ouvert à tout le monde, que vous soyez un gouvernement, que vous soyez un commercial, que vous soyez une plateforme de formation ou que vous soyez un individu lambda. Qu'est-ce que vous gagnez en intégrant AfricaCert? Vous avez la chance de faire partie de la Ligue africaine des formateurs. Vous avez également des trainings, des formations à prix réduit et vous avez la chance de pouvoir bénéficier de certaines certifications avec lesquelles nous faisons des collaborations. Nous avons plusieurs partenaires qui, lorsque vous intégrez AfricaCert, deviennent les vôtres et donc pourront vous accompagner dans vos initiatives. Au thème de ces partenaires, nous avons le FIRST, nous avons l'ITU, nous avons Smart Africa, BICC CERT, AP CERT. Il faut noter qu'aujourd'hui, nous avons en moyenne 19 membres. Et quand je parle de membres, c'est 6 CERT et individus combinés. Nous organisons également des team building et des renforcements de compétences, des webinaires et des meetings. Vous pouvez voir que nous avons déjà eu à organiser, comme c'est cité là, le CyberDrill annuel de l'AfricaCert, le bootcamp CISSP et le third SIDC CyberDrill. Donc ici, vous pouvez voir clairement qu'on a pas mal de pays qui participent à nos activités. Nous ambitionnons sur le long terme de mettre en place une plateforme numérique pour l'inscription de nos membres. Il s'agit de faciliter autant que possible le processus d'adhésion. Nous avons également l'intention de faire des publications sur les standards d'implémentation en Afrique. Nous avons également l'intention d'organiser des working groups au sein des communautés de CSIRT et de joindre le meeting d'Afrinic. Et nous sommes ici aujourd'hui pour participer au CyberDrill au Malawi. Nous avons 4 types de membres. Le membre opérationnel, le membre support, les membres individuels et les honoraires. Et nous ambitionnons de mettre en place également des membres à plein temps, des profils de membres à plein temps et des profils d'associations de membres associatifs et le AfricaCert Partner. Comment faire pour intégrer AfricaCert? Il suffit simplement d'envoyer une demande au secrétariat d'AfricaCert que je représente. Je suis actuellement le secrétaire d'AfricaCert, le BICC CERT est le secrétaire d'AfricaCert et c'est moi qui occupe cette fonction. Donc, vous pouvez vous rapprocher de moi pour qu'on puisse discuter des démarches à suivre pour intégrer AfricaCert ou alors vous envoyez simplement un mail où vous exprimez votre désir d'intégrer l'organisation, vos motivations, suite à quoi vous remplirez un formulaire d'intégration et au fur et à mesure, nous vous fournirons les informations nécessaires pour devenir membre effectif d'AfricaCert. Merci. J'ai des questions? Je ne sais pas, peut-être qu'il y a des questions? Non? Merci.
I swear if I never knew that mercy means thank you, I was going to sit down and listen on. But at least I got that one, not mercy means thank you, ne? It means thank you. Do we have any questions in French? None? In English? Assuming we heard. Do we have any questions? One or two questions? Very well. Did I see a hand? No, definitely not. All right, we cross over to the next presentation. It's a recording, about 12 minutes. After that, we proceed to have our closing remarks. The Director General for MACRA will close the meeting with some remarks. Remember, from around 6:30, we have a cocktail. I'm told it's in the foyer. If not in the auditorium, I'll get my facts right at the end of the program. In the meantime, let me ask our technical team to give us the presentation, which is the last for the day.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. George Arthew. I'm the Senior Program Officer for ICT at the SADC Secretariat. It's a pleasure for me to be given the opportunity by MACRA to deliver a presentation on the SADC cybersecurity framework. As outlined, I will go over a background. I will introduce the SADC cybersecurity model laws. I will showcase the SADC regional CERT, talk a little bit about the SADC CyberDrills and some other initiatives in the region. As background, cybersecurity is essential to each nation's security and economic well-being. Making the internet safer for both SADC users and SADC service providers, as well as providing a recourse mechanism, is part of all SADC government's policy. From a regional effort, the SADC cybersecurity framework encompasses several interrelated elements, namely the SADC legal and regulatory framework, the SADC cybersecurity action plan, which is entitled Securing the SADC Internet Ecosystem. It was developed by CRASA. The National Computer Incident Response Teams, in other words, national CERTs, the SADC regional CERT, SADC CyberDrills, and linkages to global, continental, and other groupings, such as becoming signatories to the Budapest Convention, Malabo Convention, and the Commonwealth Cyber Declaration. In November 2012, the region established a SADC harmonized cybersecurity legal and regulatory framework, which consists of 3 SADC cybersecurity model laws, namely e-commerce e-transaction model law, data protection model law, and lastly, the cybercrime model law. The 3 interrelated SADC cybersecurity model laws were developed under the Harmonization of ICT Policies in Sub-Saharan Africa, HIPSA project, which started in 2010. Development of the SADC cybersecurity model laws is a flagship project under the Digital SADC 2027, which is the ICT chapter of the SADC Regional Infrastructure Development Master Plan, RIDIMP in short, and also a flagship project in the Regional Indicative Strategic Development Plan, RISDIP of 2020-2030. SADC cybersecurity model laws are, to a great extent, aligned to the ITU Global Cybersecurity Agenda of 2007 and the Malabo Convention. And please note that ITU assisted several member states to domesticate these SADC cybersecurity model laws. Domestication status of SADC cybersecurity model laws by member states are as follows. Member states are at different levels of transposing the SADC cybersecurity model laws and setting up their institutional structures to enforce them. All SADC member states have either transposed the SADC e-commerce e-transaction model law as well as the cybercrime model law, or have existing legal framework in place. However, only 11 member states have put in place laws on data protection. The SADC cybersecurity model laws are over 10 years old and are now being reviewed. The SADC data protection model law has been revised and was validated on the 29th November last year. It is accompanied with a set of implementation guidelines and an implementation schedule to be tabled at the SADC ICT Ministers meeting in June 2023 for approval. The SADC Cybercrime Model Law is currently being reviewed. A consultant from the region has been engaged for this assignment, and plans are for us to consider and validate a revised SADC Cybercrime Model Law in August this year. The e-commerce, e-transaction model law will be reviewed in 2024-2025. Let's talk a little bit about the SADC Regional CERT. The framework for setting up the SADC Regional CERT, in short, SR CERT, is in response to cybersecurity threats, was developed and adopted by SADC ICT ministers in their meeting in September 2019 in the United Republic of Tanzania. SADC Regional CERT will be a regional collaboration platform to strengthen the regional cybersecurity awareness, confidence, capacity, ability and speed to respond to computer security incidents, as well as provide practical advice in terms of detection and mitigation to individuals as well as organizations to protect themselves and reduce their risk of becoming a cybercrime victim. It is a multi-country collaboration framework, which is responsible for regional coordination of cybersecurity as the SADC's region's point of contact on cybersecurity matters. The SADC Regional CERT provides a network of national CERTs to collaborate and for capacity building, as well as to support member states that are yet to operationalize a national CERT. The governance structure has been established. Now, there was the steering committee. The leadership of the steering committee is provided with Zambia as chair and Mauritius as vice chair. There are various technical working groups to support the steering committee. One that has been set up is the Policy, Procedures and Governance Technical Working Group. We call it the PPG TWG. Its leadership is provided by Mauritius as chair and Eswatini as vice chair. 8 member states have fully operational CERTs. Remaining member states are to have operational CERTs by December this year. As you can see from this diagram, the steering committee reports straight to the SADC structures. SADC has TSCOM, senior officials, and ministers meeting. The SADC regional CERT host will be composed of operational members and partners that can assist us to solve incident responses in the region. As an interim solution, a SADC Regional CERT task force has been established, comprising of the 8 heads of operational national CERTs in SADC to provide assistance to any SADC member state when an emergency cyber incident arises. South Africa Cybersecurity Hub head, Dr. Kiru Pillay, is the chair, and Malawi CERT head, Mr. Christopher Banda, is the vice chair of the SADC Regional CERT Task Force. They will respond to any emergency cyber incident in the region that arises within 2 hours. Let's look at what we've achieved in terms of SADC CyberDrills. SADC CyberDrills are the region's capacity building initiative for CERT officers to gain experience with managing real-life cybersecurity incidents. They share experience and knowledge on cybersecurity vulnerabilities and response through post-scenario hot wash scenarios at the end of each tabletop exercise. The first SADC CyberDrill was convened from the 10th to 13th September way back in 2018 in Cyber City, Ibin, Mauritius. It was organized in collaboration with ITU and CERT-MU. And participants, I recall, were connected to a local area network undertaking cyber drills on virtual machines. That is how we used to practice cyber drills way back. The second cyber drill, SADC cyber drill, was convened from the 13th to 14th December 2021. It was a virtual event organized in collaboration with ITU, CERT-MU, which is also the Cybersecurity Center for Excellence, as well as Africa CERT. We used SilentSec Cyber Ranges platform as well as Cyber Fortress platforms. And it was an important event for us because it was the first time we introduced one tabletop exercises on the postal subsector. For the third SADC CyberDrill that took place last year from the 20th to 21st October, we used only the SilentSec Cyber Ranges platform. And we included one tabletop exercises for the postal subsector as well as one for the banking industry, where we invited participants from central banks. The fourth SADC CyberDrill, which is planned, is going to be a physical event to be held in October 2023 during the Global Cybersecurity Awareness Month. Most member states are organizing their own national cyber drills and cybersecurity awareness campaigns, we call Cyber Month, and include as far as possible participants from a wider selection of society, including youth. Plus, hosting of continental cyber drills like this one that we're having today, we commend Malawi for doing so. Other initiatives that member states are pursuing in terms of cybersecurity. For example, Mauritius has developed a national collaborative cybersecurity dialogue platform called MoShield. The URL is provided. Now, this platform has been extended to the whole SADC region. Perhaps during this auspicious continental cybersecurity event, Dr. Kalim Ashmani, the head of Mauritius CERT, can take a few minutes to demo MoShield to participants. It is anticipated that such cybersecurity collaborative platforms would help the entire region to share cyber threat information and intelligence that can help organizations to improve their cybersecurity posture. I believe also that Malawi has a similar national cybersecurity platform. As more Africans gain internet access, we will become more exposed to potential cyber threats and risks. Cybersecurity is a collective responsibility where we all must play a part. Let us renew our efforts to collaborate and learn to fight cybercrime together and build a stronger security posture as we need to protect all Africans in cyberspace. I wish you all the best throughout the week in this cyber drill for Africa region hosted by Malawi. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Distinguished guests, that's the last presentation that we had for the day. At this juncture, let me call upon the Director General for Malawi Communication Regulatory Authority, MACRA, Mr. Daud Suleiman, to give us the closing remarks. As he's making his way forward, remember we have a cocktail this evening in the foyer. That's the building next to the one that we're in. It's just the building up there. So you are invited. I'm sure in your conference packs there were invitation cards. Make use of them and let's mingle after this meeting. That will be around 6:30.
Thank you very much, Master of Ceremonies. Good afternoon once again. I take it that it's been quite a long day and very helpful, very insightful. I was busy taking pictures of some of the presentations and asking my colleagues, where are we with this? Quite a lot of gaps. I'm speaking from a Malawi perspective. A lot of things that we need to do. Our legal and regulatory framework, the laws that we have to revise. That presentation by Dr. George from a SADC perspective, that is a minimum that we are aspiring to get to as Malawi. And not to mention the conventions, the Malabo conventions, the Budapest Convention, the Maputo Convention. I've just seen there is another one, the Commonwealth Cyber Convention. all these are very critical pieces of legislation and laws that, at a minimum, African countries we need to subscribe to. So there's quite a lot of work that we need to do, a lot of catching up. I take it that from now onwards, it's now going to be very, very technical for the rest of you. And to some of us who are in the policy and leadership direction, we are just aspiring to get to the basics. The basics shall mean covering all the soft spots and ensuring that we have a roadmap of getting to the world's best. And the world's best, whatever is happening with America in as far as their cyber state is concerned, that's where we should be aspiring to. Even though we are Malawi, we are a small country somewhere in the SADC region. We're very excited to be hosting this conference. As they say, all work, no play, it made Daud a Daud boy. So I think now we can take off your jackets, take off your neckties, and join us. We have arranged a small cocktail just about the adjacent building. There is a popular Malawian band that we have brought to entertain you with some Malawian songs, and they also do some covers for international artists, so you're not going to feel completely estranged. Hopefully, you'll be able to let some steam out. Please walk around, talk to new people. Don't stick with your countrymen. They're not going to help you. They haven't helped you. So now it's time to look for support elsewhere. So grow your network, and that's the whole reason why we are all here. By the time that you finish this conference, at least half the people in this room you should know by name, and that's how we'll keep growing. That's how we'll keep sharing. So, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the MACRA board chair, and indeed on behalf of the Minister of Information and Digitalization of Malawi, Honorable Moses Kalonga Shao Kunkuyu, I would like to invite you all to a cocktail reception to be hosted by MACRA in that adjacent building. Good evening, and may God bless you. May God bless Malawi. Thank you.
I was so done until a lost item came through. If you're missing your car keys, from what I see, it's a Mazda car key. It's been lying around since morning. Okay, fine. Lost but found. Enjoy the rest of the evening, and we commence meetings tomorrow at 9 o'clock. Thank you.